I'm excited to have Marianne Abib-Pech today lead on WECAN, the unconventional leader. Marianne, you embrace unconventional thinking to create lasting impact. You used to be the CFO of Shell Aviation, then you launched your own M&A advisory practice concentrating on frontier markets, and now you run Transitions First, an industrial venture fund dedicated to the underserved segment of scalable industrial startups. You're also a speaker and author. We're going to talk more about that. Marianne, talk to us a little bit about where you are today.
Where I am physically, I'm in Paris. In my life as a professional, I'm in this very interesting place where, you know, you work hard into raising your first fund, you're deploying the money, and then you start, grasping the reality of even more of industrial investing, what it takes, the challenges in a macro world that is the coin phrase is in a state of flux. And also starting because I am as you can say from my career, I'm always looking for building and having more impact and contributing more to our startup society. So I'm starting to think about what comes next in terms of how can I take the learning from this first fund on the underserved market of industrial innovation and tweak it to create something. I was going to say better, but it's not the right word. I think I want to create something which is more relevant vis-a-vis what I've observed in this first fund for the last 3 years, and more importantly, more impactful. So this is where I am. So it's this, very interesting moment of excitement, tiredness, fear, and gratitude as well.
Marianne, so talk to us about these insights that you've amassed over the last 3 years. What does
Yes.
that mean?
I'd be delighted. So funny because I just had another podcast literally at 9 o'clock this morning, actually, so 9 o'clock Paris time, all about industrial innovation. So, my Transition First is a cross-border, it's an international fund, early stage. Our purpose is to accelerate industrial transition, so help um, industrial project operating in the supply chain element, it being from recycling manufacturing, advanced material biomanufacturing, or food system to scale and to scale faster. What I came to that because I come from an industrial finance background, so in Shell Aviation, but before that in General Electric. And after raising this first fund and deploying money for the last 3 years, I think my learnings are there is a misconception about industry. I mean, industry is most of people would say industry is not financeable because it's slow, it's hard, and I come to have certain conclusion about that. I came to that by saying like, for me, for the last 3 years, if you really want be a industrial investor, there is a stack of attributes that you need to have. And my biggest learning is the notion of time. So if I take this in order, um, the misconception of industry in my mind is it's not strategic. And I would say that after 3 years, my career plus the last 3 years investment and looking at the state of the world today, I think industrial innovation and industrial projects are becoming a strategic allocation of capital.
Yeah.
Because right now, the game of the world or the name of the game is sovereignty, is agency.
Yeah.
And it cannot be achieved without a certain element of control
Mm.
on supply chain, i.e., a certain element of control on how you build things.
Yeah.
I think as well, looking at what have been happening over the last 50 years in the world, and the fact that, for instance, Europe completely relinquished their manufacturing capability by saying we are going to, focus on how we invent. We
Mm.
start to now realize that we've lost so much of competitive advantage, because when you do not see the entire value chain or of the value creation process
Yeah.
holistically, you very quickly lose your ability to innovate. So there's a bit of
Yeah.
a circular loop of value in that.
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to which type of investor you need for that, I think what I would say, and that has been really informing the work we've done over the last 3 years, and what I'm going to do next, I guess, is industry. When you are working in industrial project or industrial investing, you actually underwrite much more than a technology. You
Mm.
underwrite an entire system,
Yeah.
right? And when you underwrite and you want to take this system to scale and to and to success, it's above and beyond only due diligence. It's about being super hands-on and helping the founders navigate at
Mm.
every part of the value creation. What's the right strategy to optimize time, resources, technology, asset size, and everything? That's
Yeah.
really the second learning of
Mm.
doing a lot of industrial investment over the last 3 years. And then that relates to the notion of time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, um, venture time is not industrial time.
No.
Industrial projects are built on engineering timelines that needs to be operating as a continuum. And the venture time, or the way the venture capital work, is fractioned with different investor, different time horizon at every part of the stage, and this doesn't match. So this is what would be my key top learning of 3 years. I mean, actually, on a 25 years career in finance, 15 in corporate, and then 10 years in entrepreneurship and investment in industrial.
Yeah. Everything you've said makes so much sense to me. And even though I'm really not in that area, I remember growing up and we used to produce a lot of things in Germany where I grew up. And then very quickly that changed and we became a globalized world and we outsourced the production to cheaper places in the world. And that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, we tend to forget, like, I mean, it's a really interesting time because the US, China, you know, you're European, I'm European. I mean, you're German, I'm French, but I hope I know from the beginning of conversation offline that we're very European,
Yeah.
and this part of the world matters to us, right?
Yeah.
And I think we are in a unique position now to kind of like lead again in
Mm.
the industrial realm, because it's part of our culture. In Europe, we have a
Yeah.
deep tradition of, and even more in Germany, France and Germany. I mean, we have the
Yeah.
best engineers. You have a tradition of deep tech. You have, more importantly, the depth and the breadth of customer. I mean, the global player in industry are a lot are German, a lot are French, right?
Yeah.
And we keep, we have kind of forgotten this part of our history. Even even if we go even more back in times, industrial revolution started in Europe, in the
Yeah.
UK, in France and Germany,
Yeah.
with the right capital structure to support it. And I think, history is a loop. So it has to come back to us, and we have to have the courage to embrace that again, and be ruthless about it. Make sure that all the players that we have in Europe the sovereign capital, but more importantly, the strategic, as in the industrial player, come back to the forefront and have the, the vision, to some extent as well, the courage to start play earlier in the life of industrial project, so we can use them to anchor the scaling up and creating resilience in our economies.
Absolutely. Marianne, which is why it's such an underserved market. So talk to us a little bit about that power that you have being on the investment side, right? Especially in early stage.
Um, we have a power. It's an industrial market because it takes a different type of investor to understand how to do industrial project, and it's a relatively new trend. We have a power. I don't like I actually don't like the word power in this case because, the way I look at investment, it's much more we in this together. It's not, you've seen, we're probably around the same age, Stephanie. So we've seen the cycle, you have sometimes it's a founder's market, sometimes it's an investor market. And for the last decade, I would say, it has been much more an investor market with, valuation, you have the power. When I started in investment, I had always been taught this rule: if you have price, you can't have terms. And now it feels like investor can have both of them. So for me, it feels a little bit predatory. And I think, trying to understand how hard it is to scale industrial project, I want to be more like we are as a team, or at Transition First. We're very much there to be hands-on and to help. Of course, value is important, return is important, but the first thing is like, how can we help? How can we open the right door? How can we find you the right talent? Industrial founders lack three things in my mind: talent, time, and continuum of capital. So it's an underserved market. We win by helping, by being a really strict, or trying to be a strategic asset for the founders. That is the finding the right balance of challenging and supporting, of making them see that the industrial timeline needs to reconcile two types of time, what I would call the long time and the short time. And we win because I think we're a bit different in the sense that the team is very diverse. We all come from we have this hybrid VC mindset with my co-GP who's based in San Francisco, who is I was going to say a tech bro. He's not a tech bro, but he has this vibe, Silicon Valley type. And the other partner who has a industrial private equity background, and me who have a very industrial operational background. So we try to hollow all those different experiences, expertise, and viewpoint, and to serve the founders. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. So, Marianne, talk to us about your theory about this unconventional journey.
It's an interesting, like somebody was asking me once, that's how it came up. How would you describe yourself? And I'm like, oh, in one word, like big blank. Oh my God, what am I going to say? And I'm saying, I'm very unconventional. And they say, well, what do you say? And I'm like, well, if you look at my career, or, I've done industrial and financial services, which is unusual. I've done big corporate, small company. I created an advisory in frontiers market. And I can disclose, I created a business whose purpose was to deploy foreign direct investment in Iran back in 2014. So, it tells a lot about my risk appetite, right? I founded a fund. I wrote a book. I launched a women's circle as well. So all these are, for the non-educated person would say, wow, what is this woman doing? She's a jack of all trades, master of none. But I always say, but it's better to be, jack of all trade, master of none, but master of all, right? And I think, I'm unconventional because I've done very different things in my life. And instead of opposing them and comparing them, I think it's incremental. And every one of them allowed me to have depth, breadth, and also a very different take on business situation, leadership situation, and trying to give me an openness and a curiosity that I think is more and more valuable in life. I was going to say in investment, but also in life. So that's why I'm a bit unconventional, because I'm never quite fit in one box. Marianne, she can tick several boxes.
Yeah, which is great. I love that. And I would think that I'm definitely unconventional
I
myself.
forgot one thing. I'm a writer as well.
Yes, no, we're going to talk about this now. We're going to talk about your book, Leadership, How to Build Trust and Get Results.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that. What are your main messages? What do you want the readers to know?
Yeah. So the book, it's so funny that I forgot I actually wrote two books, twice. I wrote the first version of the Financial Time Guide to Leadership, and then the second version, and they were 10 years apart. What as so the books are about really it's a theoretization or system to take you through a leadership journey. And what I love about this book, it's not theory, it's actually hands-on experience, because in a nutshell, the first edition and then the second edition have the same concept, is like everything that happened to me in my career in the 10 years that it took me to go from being a junior auditor in Arthur Andersen to becoming a CFO of a global business unit of a 20 billion turnover, And it's all the good things, bad things, chances, failure, interrogation that I've been through. And based on that, I extracted a recipe with 3 pillars. I mean, the recipe for leadership is a journey that starts from within and goes to others. And it's built on 3 questions. First is, how can I lead others if I can't lead myself? So it's all about it's not personal awareness, but it's your agency. It's self-awareness. Actually, it's personal awareness, not self-awareness. The second question is, why would anyone be led by me? So it deep dives into credibility, experience, networking, a leadership brand. And then the last question is, how can I make sure that something different happen because of? So it's like, leadership at the end of the day is about action. So how do you impact your environment? And it talks about strategic vision, execution, and all that. So this recipe of leadership was informed by my experience, but also in the second edition, I added a couple of nuggets of wisdom, I think, on it, which is like, leadership always needs to be relevant. So leadership needs to be anchored in the reality of the world today. And finally, leadership needs to be concrete. You cannot be disconnected from reality. So if you ask me in one word, Marianne, the same way, like, well, Marianne, how can you define yourself in one word? Marianne, if you had one word to describe what leadership should be today, I would say it's courage more than anything. And actually, courage uh, to be different, courage to call what's not working, and courage to go against the fray, to drive what you believe is right and strategic for what you're trying to achieve.
Mhm. Yeah. Where do you think this courage comes from, Marianne? How did you get to be sort of, have this risk appetite to be different, to show up with this courage where you stick to exactly what you think
Yeah.
is the right thing to do?
I think it's, part of it is like um, innate. I'm that type of person. Everybody needs to know who they are. But I think as well, like what underpins my personality is curiosity. I'm super curious. And I think once you have curiosity and you naturally go to other people and you start asking questions and everything and creating connection in your head, you build without knowing it, you build both depth and a almost a innate pattern recognition mechanism, which makes you believe, maybe falsely, that whatever happened, you'll be fine because you would always know what to do, or you would always find the person who helps you know what to do.
Yeah.
So it's I've never seen myself as a risk taker. It's so funny you saying that. I'm just seeing myself as a open and curious person that let things happen, you know. Going in frontiers market was also a very strategic decision from my side because I really wanted to create. I had been exposed to capital allocation while I was a CFO. I wanted to create. I wanted to become an entrepreneur because the decision making process and this ultimate act of deciding was very important for me. And then I realized that, hold on, if you want, and I love deals, right? And I realized if you really want to have a shot at that, you need to go. I mean, you need to compensate for the fact that you don't come from JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs and actually go where who you are and what you've done gives you a competitive advantage. And it was frontiers market because, when we started doing business in that part of the world, it was just the beginning of the world was opening a little bit. It closed after that, but at that time it opened. So everybody was at level playing field. And it was not about who you knew, it was more about who you were. And building on this curiosity, it became, we say we have a shot because we know how to federate people, we know how to integrate. We're very humble. We went to the country with let's learn first. What does that mean? What do they need? And that was very differentiating, and it's how it all happened. So it's about curiosity.
So what advice would you give to young people that are, finishing uni, they're entering the workforce? What sort of top three things would you tell them growing into the world of today?
It's a very interesting question. And even more for me because I don't have kids. So, I don't have this like frame of reference. So I think I would tell them, you're gonna laugh. Stop using your phone all the time.
Good advice.
Stop using your phone. Learn how to think by yourself. Learn, do the hard work. Don't be afraid of hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do the work. Because even if it's hard now, it's going to give you a long-term competitive advantage, as I believe, on the top of courage as a leadership trait of tomorrow, it's also about strategic thinking and your ability to think. It's something you actually train. We were in my team, we have people that are much, I mean, I'm in my 50s, so we have people that are much, much younger, obviously. And I mean, they have this ability to work with the digital tools and AI. They were born with that. We were not, right?
No.
But what was interesting is the quality of the prompts are not the same.
No.
Because the prompts I do, I'm trying to have a rational thinking, the way I was trained or we were training, how do you reason? Um, so it's fascinating to see those, and I'm hoping, having binomes, I would say to the young people, stop your phone, start thinking, hang out with old people, so you can create a symbiotic relationship on capitalizing on how they think and their life experience, while they capitalize on your ability to navigate technology.
Yeah, I think you said that so beautifully. What a great,
I'm
powerful thing
a
to
writer,
say.
right? I'm
Yes,
a
you're
writer.
so good. Oh my gosh, that's so true. That's so true. And it's all about partnership and cooperation and really mining the gold of all the different generations to make the best out of these tools that we're being,
Yeah,
that we get every day new ones.
exactly.
Yeah.
I would also tell them, have joy. I mean, it's a darker world they were born in than when
Yeah,
we
definitely.
came to this world.
Yeah.
For us, everything was open, everything was opportunity. For them, well, when you start university and you're told, well, you can start your course, but in 80% of chances, what you're learning now is going to be obsolete before the time you go to
Irrelevant. Yeah.
university.
Mm.
How do you stay relevant? How do you succeed? What success means are deeper question for them than they were for us. For us, success was like, I want to have the corner office, or I want to be now it's I want to be an entrepreneur. But when everything is in a state of flux almost permanently,
Mm.
how do you create the backbone of your resolve?
Yeah.
And it's going back to very much earlier than what we had to do. Ask themselves the question, who I am and what do I really want? And craft your story around that much, much earlier than we had to do it, I guess. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yes, no, it makes total sense, Marianne, and I'm so grateful for all of your insight here. What do you really want? What does success look like for you now?
Me as a person now?
Yeah, you.
Yeah.
This is all about you.
You? What I really want is drive as much impact as possible.
Mhm.
And I really want in my life to, um, you know, say, I've done my part. I've done something. I've done my part. Not being passive, but being active. And today it means really two things on the top of the personal things, being a good person and having ethical ways and, being there for the people you love and all the personal stuff. But at a professional level, it's about really finding a way to finance industrial innovation the proper way. I do believe that the private market and the venture capital sequence way of financing doesn't fit. It's not relevant. It hasn't been built the right way for industrial innovation. So I really want to take a stab at cracking this and make a difference in that space. So this is what I really want. And what the second question is like,
What success looks like for
ah,
you now, but really now I think we need to talk about, and we'll circle back to that. What is that new funding architecture that you are just proposing now?
so this question has been in my mind for 6 months, and I have not find the solution yet. I have an
An
element of solution.
inkling.
Yeah, but again, as I was, telling you a little bit, if we talk in principles, it's really about flipping the system, right?
Yeah.
It's about realizing that the current system finance industrial project with one constraint and one lenses, which is liquidity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a bit backwards. And I think we know a bit like when I say, well, we got to go back to history, we got to go back to industrial revolution and everything. I think we should go back to value. How is industrial value created?
Mm-hmm.
Keeping in mind the engineering timeline, keeping in mind the compounding of risk and the compounding of complexity, keeping in mind that industrial projects are a continuous system. You're not underwriting a technology, you're underwriting a system.
Yeah.
And once you put the how the value is created at the beginning, or at the core of the equation, then start um, financing, sorry, building the funding architecture that is aligned with that, which is about more continuity, more alignment, more operational depth, and a different relationship with time.
Mm.
I told you like I started working on this 6 months ago, and it's all started by looking at what we've been doing for the last 3 years, but also asking myself, well, it's time to break something. It's time to break something. It's not time to break something, but it's time to think about things differently. And I was asking myself, am I the only one? Am I the outlier thinking that there is really something, there's a massive mismatch if you stop for a second and think for a second, right? So I started talking to different people, and it's how the think tank was created. There's no name and everything. Everything is below the radar. But talking to industrialists, investors in different markets, talking to people in the US, in Europe, in the Middle East, in Asia, trying to say like, am I dreaming or it's a trend? It's like it's a seed of a trend coming. And I was very surprised to see that there is a growing recognition that a new model needs to be thought and come to light. But it requires different type of investors.
Yeah.
Um, what became evident for me was for the last 15 years, 20 years, it was all about atoms, sorry, bits. And now it's
Yes.
about atoms. And I think this debate needs to be over, and it's even more relevant. So I know there is something to do with continuum. I know there is something to do with operational expertise. I'm working on it. And I want to be disciplined and not tell you something. I'm going to be very industrial. I'm not going to tell you something that I haven't thought through entirely, but I'll be happy to come back and talk to you about this at the end of the year when I will have
We
finished
we shall, we
my
shall,
thinking.
we shall. When your system transformation has crystallized.
Yes,
But
I will
Marianne, as I'm
definitely.
listening to you, I'm thinking you are obviously instrumental in, people like you are instrumental in transforming systems. But this is a really tall order. This is a really big thing. This is a really, this is a European thing. This is at a government level. These are real
Mhm.
interests that each of our country has to pursue in order to re-establish an economic reality that we all want. So how does that fit in to the sort of bigger picture?
Yeah. It's all about federating the right people at the right
Mm,
level to
mm,
create impact. And I think, um, in transforming society, it's a bit like an industrial project. It's incremental, it's incremental, it's incremental, and then it leaps. It's the infamous, I'm French, so G and J are a little bit like, it's the infamous J curve, right,
yes.
of thickness.
Yeah.
And I think it is an uphill battle, but I also believe that when there's a will, there's a way. And then, it's about finding the right tribe that understand industry, understand the profound nature and value of industry. I mean, for me, industrial innovation or industrial base is not a hype. It's not a cycle. It is profoundly what drove civilization. It's a civilizational issue.
Yeah,
We
definitely.
build, we
Yeah.
have to build
Yeah.
to survive
Yeah.
and to thrive. So I think, it's about finding the right tribe that gets it, that wants it, and that have the appetite. It's not for the risk, but they can match their financial need to a strategic allocation of capital that is going to endure. So it's about transgenerational impact or transgenerational wealth more than hockey stick of exit and liquidity.
Yeah.
And I'm sure,
Thank
we'll
you for
find
saying
them.
that. So important.
Thank you. It's about finding your tribe. Uh, I mean, we
And
are
isn't
what? How many
everything
people?
about that? Isn't
Yes, it's all
everything
about
about
that.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about
Yeah.
that. And I
Marianne,
believe a lot in women doing this because as we're always the underdogs, right? Well, we might as well just lock arm all together and put something together that is going to help and change
transform.
the course of what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm
Marianne,
calling to all women capital allocator to
put their
think
heads
about
together.
to think about industrial asset, put their head together and call me
Well,
or
it
email
seems
me.
like this is definitely a vehicle that you should be driving
Yeah, oh,
because
I don't know driving, but at least it's a call to action for all the. We say that you need a few men of goodwill. Today it's the time of a few women of goodwill.
yeah,
European women of goodwill.
yeah, I agree 100%. So what will success look like for you, Marianne? Obviously, cracking this big vision thinking, finding a transform this system.
Yeah, and having fun doing it. I mean, success for me today is, I've been incredibly. I was gonna say lucky, but people would say, well, no, it's not luck, it's hard work. But I was a CFO, I was an entrepreneur, I have a fund, I wrote 2 books. It's just for fun and joy now. It's about, success is helping as many people as possible and having fun doing it and doing it with people I want to do it with.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. But also you're showing us how much fun it can be, right?
Yeah,
That,
I mean,
and that this thinking, this big thinking, that's a muscle you train. And the more you do it, the better you're gonna get at it. And you're showing it with such positivity. I'm loving it. I want to go straight back to my desk and think about all the big human and social impact I want to have, and let me think a bit deeper, and then you know
and you know
great.
what? That exactly what you say, that's success for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Just you
Couldn't agree
saying
more.
that I want to do something different, that's success.
Yeah. Marianne, so talk to us about your plans and goals.
I mean, it's a bit like the plan is to crack these nuts and try to be able to raise capital around that, um, federate the right energy, and do it not as quickly as possible, but at the right time.
Marianne, and what takeaways would you like our listeners to have from your story if you had to sum it up?
Dare to be different. Never be afraid of no, and forge your own trail. Even if you're a woman, even more if you're a woman.
Thank you, Marianne. You are such an unbelievably inspiring positive force. I'm so grateful for your story and your insights.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie, and hopefully I'll see you in December to talk about the iteration.
100%.
Take care. Thank you.